Welcome back to The Recap Show. The Recap Show is proud to be an Intuit QuickBooks partner, an end-to-end business platform helping small businesses grow. From athletes to everyday small business owners, QuickBooks has you covered to help you tell your story. Today, we are joined by an icon of the sport, a World Cup and Olympic champion, and one of the most influential goalkeepers in American soccer history, Briana Scurry. Enjoy the show.
We are all in good hands on this episode. Welcome, Bri.
Yay! Welcome to TRS.
Cute. Thank you. I like it. Yes, I do. Love it. Always.
So what was it about goalkeeping that, how did you get into it? Was it that one moment where somebody tossed you something and just had this reaction that everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's destiny?
Not exactly the cat-like reflexes that you just mentioned, but actually, my first year that I ever played soccer, I played on a boys' team.
How old were you?
I was 12.
Oh my gosh, that's not
really late.
Yeah,
late
that
compared
is
to
not
most.
young.
Not young at all.
Wait, were you playing sports before that?
I was playing tackle football for 2 years before that. Pads, the whole 9 yards. And then I had to quit playing, and then soccer was what I replaced it with.
Okay, but at that time, you didn't know yet that you were going to be a goalkeeper? Or?
No idea. I knew I wanted to be an Olympian, but I did not know I wanted to be a goalkeeper or that soccer would even be the way I'd do it.
Okay, so keep going.
Yeah.
What happened next?
So I played on an all-boys team. I'm from a small rural area in Minnesota, and they didn't have any girls' teams, let alone a league. And so I played on an all-boys team. And the coach thought it was a safe place for the girl to be in the goal. And as we all know,
interesting thought.
It's the opposite. It's true, right? It's the most dangerous place to be. So I went in there. I played for the entire year. The next 2 seasons, I came out and played in the midfield and also as a forward. I liked it. I liked scoring goals. Ain't gonna lie. But I liked saving them more. So it just suited me better.
I always say that there's 2 positions on the field that actually share a similar profile where you're a little bit isolated, and that's the goal scorer and the goalkeeper.
Yes.
So I feel like you kind of had a sense for both, where you were like, if I'm not scoring, I better be the one saving goals.
I have to say, playing in the field helped a lot with my goalkeeping. I mean, I understood what you might be thinking, and I was able to adjust accordingly. So I loved it.
So that dream of being an Olympian, which I think a lot of, probably both of our generation share, where we had this, if we wanted to be a great athlete, it's almost like that thing that we all kind of wrote down, we want to go to the Olympics. That dream, was there any moment, whether it was growing up or in your family, that you can remember that dream first being planted in you?
Yes. I can remember exactly when that was. Wow. So I was watching the Lake Placid ice hockey team for the USA in 1980 with my mom and dad on the couch. And that team, if you recall, was a huge underdog against the USSR. And they won against them 4-3 after losing 10-3 2 weeks before. So somehow 8-year-old little Bri understood what she was watching. And I was just amazed by the greatness that I was seeing. And I just jumped off the couch and I said, I want to be an Olympian.
Wow.
And and thankfully, parents that, some parents would probably dismiss such a thing and just think it's just a phase or just something that I said. But my parents nurtured that little dream and I eventually made it.
Wow. Was there at the time, there weren't many girls playing sports. Like you said, you played on a boys' team. They put you in the quote-unquote safe position, which was the most, I was going to say violent position on the field, most dangerous position. But were your parents a little bit kind of how do we do this? Was there a kind of pathway for girls at the time to play sports?
There wasn't a pathway, but I think what the beautiful part about my parents is that they allowed me to decide certain things and then they would usually support it. There was only 2 instances where I picked a sport and they said no to. One was hockey, ice hockey with blades and sticks and things. And then after playing 2 seasons of tackle football, they said, okay, that's enough of that. So otherwise, they just let me play. I would bring, flyers home about volleyball and, soccer and softball and all these different sports, and they just let me play. So it wasn't really that odd to me, but I guess I was actually blazing the trail at the time. I just didn't realize it. And it was really, something that was natural to me, I guess.
Huh. How long did you play on boys' teams?
2 seasons.
In soccer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But you were also on boys' teams for tackle football.
Tackle football.
I don't think there were girls.
One of the only 2 girls in the entire league playing.
And you're like early teenage years.
Yeah.
Wow.
10, 11 years old.
How do you think, like looking back now, how do you think that shaped you and your idea of gender and your identity, being only able to play because you were brave enough to play with boys, but then also when you got there, being the only girl?
The more I think about it, I'm actually very surprised that they let me, to be honest, because it very easily could have been something that somebody said or a parent said, objected to it, to having a girl out there. But luckily for me, I loved playing football because I loved watching football with my dad on the weekends, the NFL, which was on Sundays only back then. And he said, sure, go ahead and play. And I loved it. And it was just the pads, the helmet, the whole thing. And it was intense. I was a linebacker on defense and a wide receiver on offense.
Wow.
I was scoring touchdowns and tackling people, and I absolutely loved it. And I was good at it. So they encouraged it.
Wow. I believe it.
Yeah.
What was the pathway like for getting to the U.S. Women's National Team at that time? Like what was your first idea of the U.S. Women's National Team? And then like what were the steps to actually make that team?
So for me at the time, I came in what I call the back door. I wasn't on regional teams. I didn't go through the youth system. I wasn't seen early on in my playing career. I actually never even went to a training camp of any kind until I was in high school. And so I just did the best I could with what I had. And I realized that there was a women's national team my sophomore year in college. When my coach told me that I could be good enough to play on the national team. And I said, I didn't even know there was one.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the first time I'd heard about the women's national team.
Wow.
And I didn't even realize that I was, being looked at. But I realized that after the fact, when I wrote my book a couple years ago, I talked to my coaches and all these different people about the journey for me. And I was curious. I was like, there was a lot of things that I did on my own. But I thought to myself, surely other people must have stood up for me or vouched for me or believed in me for me to get there, because it so convoluted the path for me. And sure enough, a lot of my coaches were, talking to each other, and they had me, in mind for that team way before I even knew I was being looked at. So it was very interesting.
What were you doing differently than the other goalkeepers around you that made you stand out?
I think for me, being untrained initially actually helped me in my abilities to save balls. I was a great ball stopper, first of all. Way better than being a soccer player. I didn't become a soccer player till I got on the national team. Originally, I was a ball stopper, and it mixed good with my other sports that I played. I played basketball, rebounding, all these different things. I played multiple sports, and it really worked together. And I think I was fearless, I guess you'd say.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah, I would just try to get the ball any way I could. And over time, I learned that I was doing things differently than any other female goalkeeper had done up until that point, which was surprising to me because I was just doing what I naturally thought I should do.
I love that. I think we could do a whole second episode on actually like development from a perspective of like players that don't take a traditional path or a traditional pipeline and actually are playing from like instinct and creativity and figuring out how it works for them.
Exactly.
Because then all of a sudden you see something special as opposed to just like, I don't want to call run of the mill like players, but like now it feels like you see players that are just like, exactly the same.
That's
but I would
actually
love.
just what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Like, I think in my own career, I considered myself taking like a scenic route. Yeah, because I never played on youth teams. And it wasn't until I sort of let go of my idea that I could make the national team and I moved far away and I thought no one could see me because the games weren't on TV then, right? That I made it. And I actually think that is, again, like a superpower, like the untraditional path.
Yes.
And then when I, became a professional in the NWSL and the national team, I had it in my mind that if I did the same thing as everyone else, then I'd end up where everybody else was. And so that like came a part of my identity a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Instinctively, you knew that.
I think I felt it.
Like it gave you a superpower a little bit?
Well, I guess I think it was just a part of my identity that I felt like everyone, in my generation, everyone had grown up on the youth teams.
Right.
So like Tobin, you joined the national team when you were 17 and you had played with those same players since you were 14. And then I come on at 24 and I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Christen. Like no one knows what my name is,
I love it.
And so that did become a part of my identity. And I'm hearing that in your story as well. It's like almost not going through the steps of always seeing the national team. It is actually a little bit of freedom there.
Yes.
And a little bit of playfulness, which I love. And I actually think that shows up in the way that you played, that joy and that intensity.
Yeah.
That,
and that smile, the intensity and the smile, I feel like there were like these players on the national team that had these like, these two personas where, like they would go in hard and they would just like kick you and then they would just like smile at you. It's like, I loved it. But like this is kind of a full circle moment for Christen and I because, we were both part of the generation that watched you in the 99 World Cup. I was at the opening match and Christen was at the final.
I knew that.
Isn't that so cool?
It is
that
so
like
cool.
we were like in our seats, like watching you were inspiring us.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
At 11.
And it's so interesting because I've done so many amazing things in my life and won great awards and whatnot. But that is the thing that I cherish the most is the influence and impact positively that I've had on people over the years. And I feel like it's like a sisterhood that we have together. And now you all are the ones that are on the pitch and there's young girls in the stands watching you play. And it's just goes on. And it's such a positive and really meaningful role to have played in your life. It makes me feel like my life was well lived because of it.
It is a beautiful like journey when you watch it.
Yeah.
We all have been a part of these, iconic World Cups.
Yes.
That have inspired. And we all know that history or the way it's written about, the way the 99 World Cup is written about, the way the 15, the way the 19 World Cup was written about, history is just storytelling. It's not actually like the facts, the truth that happened. If we were to orate, the World Cups, they probably would sound a little bit different from our own lenses.
Yes.
Would you be so kind to give us a different picture, maybe one we haven't heard of that 99 World Cup?
Well, so for me, I was always seen as very, very intense and very serious on the pitch. And I had a persona and an understanding that when I had my headphones on, you didn't bother me, you didn't talk to me, you didn't say anything, you didn't look my way. I was very, very, very business, very serious, very intense. But off the pitch, I was I would like to think I was a lot of fun. Right? I mean, I was having fun. I'd make jokes. Hang out. And so a lot of people don't know that side of me. So often when they meet me for the first time, they have in their mind, angry, feisty, game face, right? But when they actually meet me and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I'm smiling and I'm shaking their hands and hugging them. It's a little bit astonishing for them. They're taken aback a little bit. They're like, oh, wow. And then also, I'm shorter.
Yeah. You took up that goal.
Everybody's taller than me now. And so when people meet me in person, they're like, oh, I thought you were taller. I'm like, I just played big. You know, I did what I could. So.
That's a compliment.
I appreciated that.
Do you think that you lived in that dichotomy? Like it, not that people didn't understand you and they thought you were serious, but you were really, but that you actually had the two sides of you that you really saw as you, but as the two sides of the coin of you, where you could work into and out of that level of intensity. And if so, how did you do that?
So my entire life, I've always just been who I am. And I've never tried to not be me in any certain situation or circumstance. And the best way that I found to be able to do what I had to do in goal, which is obviously high intensity, high concentration, high stakes, the highest of stakes, I knew I had to get into a certain state. And so my game face, my game state was something that I created over time. And it's something that if you think about energy and say it's moving all throughout you, and what I was visualizing myself as doing is bringing it together in time for the 90 minutes. And so when I was actually on the pitch in that uniform, I was a different person, like a superhero, my superpower. And then I would play the game, and then it would take time to come out of character, of state, over the course of several hours before I would come down off of that. So I literally transformed into someone else who was ready to do battle. And I knew that I was doing it too.
And how'd you do it? So, because I do relate, like, I think there's a lot of practices that we might have to like try to get into it, whether it's the certain playlist that we listen to, or I ground after every time I play. Did you have anything like tangible that you can speak to of like when you're like, okay, it's time to become superhero Bri, like this is what I'm doing?
Yes, I had a couple of rituals actually. So as soon as I walked out of my hotel room is when it started. So I would always look back at the room and think to myself, how do I want to return here?
Oh, wow. That is so powerful.
Do I want to return as a winner? And winning meant, did I give all I had to give for that game and on the pitch? It's not about a result. And then I would become to go into that state. And then over the course of time, polishing my shoes was part of my ritual. Making sure my shirt was tucked in exactly so. You know, making my gloves damp so that they were stickier. And there are these certain things I would go through, and my teammates would see the transformation happening right before their eyes. And so I was always aware of the things, but I didn't have such a rigid ritual that if something didn't happen, I was thrown off course.
I see. That's the first thing I noticed, that you use the word ritual instead of superstition.
Yes.
And actually now that when I started to hear them, it sounds a lot like honoring what you're doing, like polishing your shoes. It's like the respect.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. It gives me a feeling.
You got to respect the game.
I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's like, not to like honor the football gods, but I do find like sport and art, you know, I kind of interchange them as what we're doing is like sacred. And I think all of those rituals, all of kind of the sacrifice and the acknowledgement that what you're doing is important and it matters, and you're bringing your whole self, you're bringing all of your gifts to the table. Like, I feel like that's when the greatest art and performances happen.
Absolutely. I mean, the words performance and art go together for me. Like, I was playing a game, but the way I went about it, the preparation, I was very philosophical and very like psychological when I played. I had these different ways of how I thought about it, which was different than other people who played. For example, if I'm having to make 5, 6, 7 saves, that's actually it's woof. It's not, oh, good game for you. No, not good game, right? Because I'm too busy. So how can I change the game to make it so I can put my defenders and my teammates in great positions so that they are doing what they need to do so that we could get the right outcome?
Yeah.
Like, these are the things I actually thought about. And when I would go about playing, I want to make sure I could try to catch every ball, because if I don't catch it, there's a rebound, there's another save. And then before you know it, the other team's psychology is like, ooh, we've got them on the run. We can do this. We can win this. My philosophy was go out there and crush them as soon as possible. so that they never thought that they could win this game. So,
it's so cool because you're talking about energy and like reading the energy and controlling the energy through knowing the patterns and through your contribution and through delegation. Actually reminds me of something Tobin recently told me. She was helping me with my like defensive positioning, and she said, if you have to tackle, you've already made a mistake. Because it's like if you can position yourself smarter, if you can communicate in a better way, you can win the ball without having to tackle, and that's what it just evoked.
Yeah, you're a genius because you're looking like, you know, before you have to make the save, which is like, I think, you know, everyone wants to be like in the acute moment, you know, but that is powerful. It's like being able to prophesy like the game, you know, it's powerful. I love that. You're such a genius. It made you so great. I can see it all. Did your life change after 99? And how so?
Oh, that's just what I wanted to ask.
Yes.
Great question.
I mean, the whole lead up to 99, as you recall, both of you, we were essentially educating about our game, selling our game to our country. Please come and watch us. So for several years, we did that. So by the time the first game came on in Giant Stadium, we were ready. It was showtime. It was time to actually do the thing. And so for me, I was just incredibly excited and nervous and emotional because all the hard work we had done and what we had hoped we would do was shown in that 76,000 people in the stadium. And so when we came out of the tunnel, it was very like emotional, and we all like started crying.
Wow.
And it was like, okay, I got to get a grip on myself because I got to play a game now, and this has to go well. So over the course of that tournament, you were actually living the thing you built, and you're in it. Now you're on the stage as opposed to building the stage, and you're doing your thing. And so for the final, I had already felt like I had done the majority of my job in the semifinal getting us there. Because
little did you know.
It was one of those games, where I was very, very busy. Yeah. So I was like, we're not our normal selves today. So I have to take the lift. I have to take the weight on my shoulders now and carry more than my 1/11th of responsibility for this game.
Yeah.
And so I did that. So when the final came, 90,000 people in the stadium, I had to make sure that I wasn't like awestruck by the number of people or anything or the magnitude of the moment. And so for me, just continuing to stay focused and keep my intensity, that was the key. And if I do what I can do and do it the best I can, we're going to come out of this the way we want. High drama, obviously.
Oh my gosh, the drama.
It always didn't want to do it that way, but hey, why not, right? Shoot. So
when you just touched upon what the team did in the build up to the World Cup in going out and educating the world about women's sports and women's soccer and the World Cup, it immediately made me think about 2019 when we were simultaneously preparing for our World Cup and fighting for equal pay. And I have a theory that some people like, some people don't, that like that fight was perhaps the only reason we won. Because we played for something bigger. And I have a little bit of fatalist in me where I'm like, it was destiny.
Me too.
And there was this feeling that players in moments were out of body experiences because it was not about us. We were just vessels for this like bigger thing. And I'm wondering if you have a thought about that, because that lead up to the World Cup and what compelled you all to go out and say, hey, we can play, we can sell tickets, we can educate, we can do it all. And then in doing so, do you think that it gave you an edge?
The audacity, right? The audacity to think that we could do something amazing, unprecedented, and great in a non-soccer country that we were, especially at the time. And for me, like I'm totally relating to what you're saying, because that moment that I knew we were going to win was when Christine Lilly headed that ball off the line in the overtime. And as soon as I saw that ball go past me, back then it was golden goal.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh.
Right?
That's epic.
Oh, it is epic.
I see the ball go by me and I'm like, oh,
That's it.
you know, we're done. And then I see the ball go past me again. And I'm like, right?
You're like,
and I'm scrambling because I'm trying to get up, and then I see Brandy Chastain do like a bicycle kick at the top of the 6 and get it out of bounds. And that right then I was like, we're gonna win this thing.
oh,
We're gonna win this thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how exactly, or it doesn't matter how.
Yeah.
I just knew outcome already right then. And so when people ask me about how did you feel, you know, did you think you were gonna make a save? My job in the penalty kicks, save one.
Mm-hmm.
5 players' jobs, make one. It came down to that simple.
Yeah.
Save one, make one.
Yeah.
And if we do it, that's it. That's all you need to do.
That's a good mantra.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Well, it changed the course of history for all of women's sports, for women globally. It inspired our generation, the next generations that would go and have the audacity to try to do it themselves.
Yes.
That is just, it's beautiful.
I know.
Like,
it's hard to move off the topic. Like I have a lot of other things I want to talk to you, but I
I wanted-
actually feel frozen. Like I want
wanna
to be
stay
in
here
that
forever.
moment.
Yeah.
The ball goes past you and past you again. I'm like, and you also remember it so well.
Yeah.
I do. It was an out-of-body experience.
mhm.
It
Clarity.
really was. Absolutely.
So back to my question.
sorry.
About the after.
Yes, because
Yes.
I'm very curious, because we have to remember this was before the time of social media. So it's not
Yes.
like you look at your phone and your followers have blown up and
Right.
everybody's like, you're amazing, and like all the comments. Media was different back then, right? It was very much the middleman, whatever, you know, outlet was going to shine a light on you or the team and the story. And I can imagine after that moment, there was just like a huge kind of boom.
Yes.
So I'm curious what that moment was like for you personally and how it changed your life.
So as a goalkeeper versus a field player that takes a penalty kick, as a goalkeeper who saves a penalty kick, it's a little bit different, in particular about the order. So because I made that PK save on number 3 as opposed to the final kicker, there's a little bit difference there. So my part was understood that I did what I did, that I made the save. But the perception of me as a human being, as a person, was definitely off. So I got a lot of criticism about that PK save because, as we all know, I was off the line just a little bit.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of, that's how we did it back then.
Exactly.
That's how the game was played, right? That's how you did it. And so over the course of the first media interviews right after the game, I got a lot of questions about that. And then I found out later after the game when I watched the replay, you know, several weeks later, that the camera showed me going up into the stands to meet my girlfriend. And then once the camera saw it was a female, cut away. Followed me all the way up
Wow.
and then cut away.
Wow.
And so I, for the longest time, thought it was because I was a goalkeeper. That was the reason why I didn't maybe get as much accolade, as much press, as much, you know, sponsorships or partnerships or endorsement deals as other girls got. I thought it was because I'm a goalkeeper as opposed to an attacking forward or midfielder or whatever. But then it wasn't until later on that I realized, no, it wasn't about the goalkeeper at all. It was about either A, being a woman of color, or B, being out
Wow.
and being gay.
Wow.
And so the truth is, I was devastated when I realized what it was, because I didn't ever want to be that person that ever felt I was hindered in any way, shape, or form because of that. It took me a while to realize that it wasn't my issue.
Yeah.
It was the media's issue. So in answer to your question, I got a lot of attention, but it always came with, I didn't think you got enough attention, so I wanted to tell you that you were awesome. I did all these different shows, Rosie O'Donnell and all these different talk shows and stuff, but they always brought me on because they felt like I didn't get what they thought I should have gotten. And so for me, it was interesting, and I was like, oh, but goalkeepers don't get, they don't get the show. I didn't score the last goal, blah, blah, blah. But it took me a while to realize it. So my life changed dramatically after I was well known. I was recognized. I was, upgraded on flights and dinners and all of that. But at the very essence of it, there was always a little something that like picked at me about it all. And I really couldn't put my finger on it until years later.
Yeah.
How interesting that it was an afterthought. I think that's actually kind of something beautiful that I'm thinking about in your brain, that you were like, it's because I was a goalkeeper. Yes. And like, that's almost shows like how much pride and confidence you had in your own identity, that you were looking for that.
Yes.
As opposed to a chip on your shoulder and you always falling back on, how you're raised or what people think of you from the outside. I think that shows a lot about your mentality. And also I think, now that we're far from the moment in time, and yet so many of the same issues are with us. But I think in women's soccer, you are seen as a pioneer, and not just because you were on the 1999 World Cup team, but because of who you were on that team. And maybe some of the things that picked at you were the very things that gave us all hope.
Really
to be ourselves
to
be able to be ourselves in the face of criticism. Because I know, as you know, like representation matters.
Absolutely.
And it is a beautiful thing to see the evolution of the U.S. Women's National Team in diversity, of backgrounds, of races, of sexuality, all of the things. And you're such a big part of that. So thank you for being you. Thank you for always being you.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I really appreciate that. That, along with the influence of younger people. For me, I didn't really realize that I was doing that for other people until they told me that.
Yeah.
And I was just out there being me, doing my thing. And so for me, that's a real honor that I could do that for somebody else while doing the thing that I loved most, which was,
and that's why it's so authentic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I would love to hear just a little bit about what it was like on the early days of the U.S. Women's National Team, from a pay and respect perspective. I think I heard you once talking about the uniforms. So I thought you could shed a little color for all of our listeners on what it was like back then, so that everyone can see also how far we've come.
So when I first came on the team, which was November 93, we used to get hand-me-down uniforms from the men's team. So these uniforms were big and baggy. You go look at the pictures, you'll see how big and baggy they were, because they weren't cut or made or shaped for females. Yeah. And so you were literally swimming in these things. And it wasn't even something you really thought about at the time until someone came in, from Nike and was like, maybe we should ask you.
Imagine that.
What a revelation. Ask the players what they want. And what they think and how they feel. And so that was when it first began, when Nike came on board as a major sponsor for the team. I was one of the original 5 Nike girls.
Oh, that's cool.
Nike was not in soccer until then. Yeah. And so, giving my input about what I thought about gloves, about shoes, about jerseys, about all this stuff. And they actually, were interested in what we thought about stuff. They didn't just give us stuff and say, wear it. Yeah. And so over time, obviously now, the jersey is practically technology. Yeah. It's cut a certain way. It shines a certain way. It moves a certain way. It breathes. It's like a piece of art, really. And it's very different than it was for us. And the early days, we had to fight for something that the men took for granted, which was basically everything. Middle seats on planes, nice hotels, per diem, which was ironic. And like really the per diem thing was probably one of the most insulting pieces.
Yeah.
Was that women didn't need as much money as men because we didn't eat as much as they did. The per diem is not for eating, first of all. It's not for that. It's for, activities in the course of a day. And so you're saying to me that because I'm female, I don't want to do the same things that men would do that cost exactly the same as it does for me and it does for them. Like it was actually very insulting almost. And so it was something that offended our sensibilities.
Yeah.
And so when we went on strike right before the Olympics, which for me was a really big deal because that was my dream. And I was like, you know what? It came back to this is bigger than me thing that you said earlier. Was like, we have to do this. And I'm going to be a part of it because at the time I had a big role. And so I was one of the 9 that basically said, this is not okay. And put my potential Olympic dream on the line. But I didn't hesitate to say yes to doing that because I knew that this was more important and I was supposed to do this. So I did.
You have an incredible story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You keep getting me.
But those conversations, like we talk about how I remember when I first came on the team, it was the same conversations, right? Like throughout the generations of being, obviously not paid equally, but certainly not treated equally. And I think at the end of the day, like you said, the per diem, the jerseys, the way you traveled, it was the lack of respect towards women that said to us over and over again about how little we mattered and how little we were valued compared to the men's team.
Yes.
And we were doing the same job, if not a job more, because we certainly were working a lot more. So I always think about the equal pay lawsuit that we ended up, taking a hold of during our generation. But we always reference this has been a fight that has been ongoing since the beginning of this team.
Decades.
And to wear the jersey is to wear the fight that every single player has participated in.
Absolutely.
And I think we all know and are all proud now of where the game is, of where women's athletes are, of how women are respected and what sport has done to really push that further, forward, because we have all participated in those rooms where we said, no, this isn't right. And I think it's a shared identity and a shared thread. So the media was somebody got to say if they wanted you to go to an interview or be on the cover of a magazine or something like that. Nowadays, if you had won a World Cup, if you had done the heroics that you had done, you could have posted that celebratory photo of you, would have gone viral, and people that connected with that moment, connected with you personally, connected with you embracing your girlfriend or being a representation of a strong Black woman, probably one of the only very few Black players on the national team at that time, would have inspired, would have wanted to connect with you, would have wanted to know your story more, would have wanted to see that intensity, but also see the smile and the laughs of you. But at the time, there was this divide of media that somebody else chose if somebody would get to know you or not, right?
Yes.
And I think it's we, for as much as we hate social media, this is something, a great gift that social media has given women's athletes in particular, is the ability to not have to have a middle person to be able to speak to the people that they're inspiring. Do you think that at the time if you had the ability that athletes have now to go directly to their fans and their audience, that would you have enjoyed that in a moment like a 99, or would it have terrified the crap out of you?
Ooh, there's so much there in that question. I've thought about this at length. How would things have been if social media existed?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we would have been world renowned, way magnitude, levels of magnitude more than we were.
Yeah.
Because you would have known us. You would have known I had a tattoo. You would have known this person had a dog. You would have known me. You would have known Cindy Parlow, Julie Foudy, me, in a way that you can only know if you see them behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
The fun we had, the smiles we had, the things we did that were just like you, we're the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would have really inspired so many more young people to say, hey, she likes broccoli too, or she doesn't like broccoli, like me, or, these little intricacies. And so I think the women who have the opportunity now, like you guys in particular, have wielded that social media advantage in such a magnificent way that people know that you just got a puppy. People know that.
Oh, Bob, thank you so much for bringing up Bob.
People know that you're doing this, you're doing that, and who you really are outside of that person on that stage for that 90 minutes or however long it is. However, if it wasn't for the person on the stage, they wouldn't be influenced or enticed or, leaning towards, I want to know her better. But you're right, we didn't have anything like that. And the media did decide, and that's a really profound way that you described it, because I never actually thought of it that way. It was like, people were chosen, or they weren't.
Yes.
With social media, everybody can find their people.
Yeah, because nowadays, so much of athletes are monetized by their personal brands.
Yes.
Not necessarily obviously your brand is tied to what you did on the pitch. Mm-hmm. But when you look at that moment, you also, because of the structure of media and who they were promoting and why, and maybe the reasons why you were kind of like, why am I not getting that why not? And you've done you were like, I'm a goalkeeper, but there are more things there.
Yes.
And that you actually missed out on significant financial gain as a women's athlete that's tied to these big tentpole moments.
Yes.
Is that something that you also think about? Because for athletes, you have a very condensed period of time where you can make money. It's your career. It's a lot shorter than other careers that you capitalize on these big moments. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think your story is like, you didn't have that opportunity as much as you should have, right?
Mm-hmm. So what I'll say to that is, you're absolutely right. At the time when these things were done, World Cup wins, penalty kick saves, Olympics, all of that, in my playing career, I didn't get the financial gain, the accolades, the fame, if you will, as much as I would have now. But the irony is, because of that and the way I did it at the time, I have a level of integrity now. And in this day and age, with women's sports exploding, with, people like you guys, bringing attention to our team and our team's success over the course of decades, I'm now involved in the moment in way bigger financial way at 53 than I was at 23 or 26 or 31. I'm having my time now, and it's amazing to me. So better late than never.
Yeah.
For me, but I mean, I'm so grateful for you guys to have continued to bring the attention to the beautiful game that we played and the team that has an amazing legacy that is now helping me actually be more successful off the pitch than I would have been at the time.
I love that so much because I actually think Tobin and I are in this middle generation where we're like looking back at, always looked up to all of you as like the first. And we were like, we have to carry this torch and honor them, right?
Thank you.
And now we have in a lot of ways passed or at least done a lot of the passing of the torch. And the next generation is this TikTok generation and they got their own things going on, right? And it's still continuing to grow. And we felt like you planted the seeds and we're watering the seeds and now it's like sprouting.
Harvest.
And I think that comes with a bit of complication as human because I'm so excited and happy to see it, but it's also like, well, great, now they're all getting paid. just being really human for a second, right? And I never actually thought, and I also felt that from the prior generation. It was like we got more. We had our perfectly fitted kits. We always flew business and we were always asking for more still, right? So we have that bit of tension that just comes with reality.
Sure.
And I love the idea that the fruit of the labor goes in both directions.
Yeah.
It does.
That you are able to use the incredible, untouchable one-of-one soccer career that you had and create business and business opportunity for yourself, for your teammates, and then continuing for us and the next generation. And in a way, we're in a symbiotic relationship where what you did 1000% inspired us. And maybe in a way, what we have been able to continue has actually had a benefit for the people who, in my mind, deserve it the most because you had the hardest, steepest part of the climb. Like I always talk about carrying the torch up the mountain, but your part was like really cold and really steep. And
that snow was deep, girl. That snow was deep at the foot of that mountain. Let me tell you. Shoot. Still carrying that torch, by the way.
Yeah.
Still carrying it. Proudly. It's a badge of honor, that torch.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
That dual mandate. Dual mandate. When you play for the women's national soccer team, you are responsible for two things. Brilliant football on the pitch. And you raise the bar for the ones that come from behind you.
I love
raise
that.
The bar.
I love that. And I think that I'm getting emotional. My emotional release journal is really working.
I'm glad I could help.
Well, I was just thinking that I hope that the next players, and maybe there's some listening to this podcast today, will do something that you've just taught me, which is before you left that room, you looked back at the door and you said, how do I want to return to this? And I think what a beautiful gift to be able to maybe give the next generation to just not look forward to what they want to be and become and achieve and do, but also to look back at that door and that door symbolizing all of the athletes, the sacrifice, the fight that came before, to look back at it and to think, how do I want to return to this? When I'm done, and then somebody has to look back at another door, are we proud of it? And I think for us, your generation and the door that we always looked back on, it was an honoring of that, and a believing that we too could do something truly special and unique. And I think that's the symbol of every kid that puts on that kit, is that looking back. And then also that looking forward to what they're going to do is so pretty.
I loved this conversation.
Oh, you guys.
Thank you so much for everything you've done and for spending your time sharing it again with us.
I appreciate it.
Please
Great
come
to see
back.
you guys. I would love to. Anytime.
Once again, we'd like to thank Intuit QuickBooks for their support of the Recap Show, women's sports, and small businesses everywhere.
All right, fam. And now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, community questions. And what I will let you know is that it's been a solid day, a long day. So this segment might end up being sort of like community questions after dark. And there is something different about our studio. Try to figure it out.
Only the real ones know.
Why don't you go first?
Melissa from Toronto wants to know, Christen, chicken or fish? Which is your favorite to cook or eat?
I'm going to go with chicken.
I just wonder, again, I just wonder about these questions sometimes.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say. Can I have my community question? They asked me, not you. I like cooking chicken. You can cook it in so many different ways. Tobin gets sick of my chicken. I don't like cooking fish, but I can cook it one way very, very well. Next, Jordan from Alabama asks, Tobin, we learned from community questions what Christen's ideal day would be, but what is yours?
Wake up early, somewhere with warm water and surf, and then come back and herkle-durkle and have a big cup of coffee and chill, maybe do some art, maybe watch something, explore, all with Bob, of course.
I was like, she's just lying to you all, but she wasn't. She was just getting to the point. Got it.
Jamie from Minnesota asks, can you walk us through a typical day of training or preparation before a big match?
Okay, a typical day of training.
Yeah, I was going to do training too. You read my mind.
And it's going to be really hard for me to skip over what I do before I go to training, but I'm going to be to the point.
That's my favorite part.
I get in the car at 7:50. And I've been driving to training with no music, no entertainment, no podcast, just dead silence, a heat seat, and a cup of coffee. And I'm in the car for about an hour and 10. Then I have to do my wellness, where they ask me on an iPad how I slept, what color my pee was, those types of typical questions. Then I change into my gear, eat breakfast. I usually bring homemade overnight oats with some granola. Yum. Then I go into treatment where they mob my kneecap for about 15 minutes, stretch out my hips, go to a quick team meeting, to the gym for activation, put up my hair in a ponytail, put on the zinc, to the field, brain games with my teammates, some juggling, practice starts. End of practice, take off my shoes, walk around the field, jump in the shower, eat lunch, drive an hour home. Always take a rain call on the way home.
Efficient.
Yep. Lily from North Carolina wants to know, Tobin, during your UNC days, what was your go-to cookout milkshake?
Oh, good one. Sadly, I'm not a milkshake person. I'm not really an ice cream person.
Okay. During your UNC days, what was your go-to Starbucks order?
But wait, I was going to finish because cookout is like a thing.
I know, I've been to cookout.
Oh, you have. So I wasn't really stoked on milkshakes, but I was stoked on the experience of getting off campus and driving in like a cool, like upperclassman's car late night and going to
sounds
the
very
cookout.
Inappropriate.
To get a milkshake.
But Kristen, you didn't get a milkshake.
To get a milkshake.
You weren't interested in the milkshake. You made that clear.
I was just there for the milkshake vibes.
That's what I said. Sounds a little sketchy.
Whatever.
Anyways, what was your go-to order from Starbucks?
Oh, yeah. So I was a Starbucks girly, which is funny because now I won't be called dead in a Starbucks.
Lies.
Just kidding. Overseas, I will. My Starbucks order, I would go to Starbucks twice a day. In the morning, I would have a vanilla latte, and in the afternoon, I would have a chai tea latte.
See, that was a quality answer to a community question. Thank you for doing that because that was the last community question of the evening. Thank you all so much for your questions. It is an honor for us to be able to sit here after dark and laugh and share. Want more of the recap show brought to you by Intuit QuickBooks? Like, rate, and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.